What is going on, squad? In this one, we have how to avoid the $1.74 million mistake. I guess, kind of to preload here, a lot of times with investing, it really comes down to doing too much. I meet people sometimes that they're like, oh, I day trade or I do this and that. And a lot of times I hold myself back because honestly, I don't want to make them feel bad. Let's say if they're doing some sort of strategy, I don't want to tell them, like, hey, statistically speaking, it may not work. This letter is intended to avoid those things and to give you the information. All right. So let's go to the first one. In the example, I pretty much compare two people. I call them Bad Bunny and Taylor Swift. Let's assume both of these individuals are 25 years old, living in Miami, each making $75,000 a month. They both do the same exact thing. They decide to get serious and start investing $500 every single month. All right. Fast forward 40 years. They're both 65, ready to retire. One of the individuals, Bad Bunny, let's say, ends up with $2.4 million in his portfolio, and the other friend, Taylor Swift, ends up with $658,000. So obviously, off rip, that's a huge difference. You're saying, wait, these guys or these guy and girl both invested $500 a month at the age of 25 for 40 years, and they ended up with the $1.74 million difference. How did that happen? The very simple answer is average annual return. All right, so let's dive in. Bad Bunny didn't get lucky. It wasn't perfect timing. It wasn't some secret day trading strategy. The only difference that Bad Bunny did versus Taylor Swift in this example is that he was able to earn 10% annually versus Taylor Swift was able to earn 6% annually. So 4% difference in returns over the course of 40 years is a huge difference, right? And sometimes people kind of get lost in the sauce and don't realize that making 10% annually versus 6% is night and day. And a lot of times people try to overcomplicate it and try to, when it's, again, I say doing too much in, investing in specific stocks and this and that and day trading and options and Forex, whatever. Again, everyone has their own strategy. Everyone has their own way to make money. And I'm not going to stop any of you from doing whatever you're doing. All right. Let's get into some of the statistics that I found to give you the example more in detail. It says Taylor thought she was playing it safe and being smart with diversification. She had 30% of her money in a 401k, 20% in a mutual fund with 1.2% annual fees, 25% in bonds, 15% sitting in savings, and 10% in random individual stocks. After accounting for returns and fees, her portfolio was 6%. With Bad Bunny, he kept it very simple. Again, this is not financial advice or projecting future results. Historical returns do not project future returns. He invested in something like an S&P 500. So again, he put 60% of his money into the top 500 stocks in the United States with something like an S&P 500. And in the scenario, he put 40% of his money in something like a NASDAQ 100. What is the NASDAQ 100? Again, these are the top 100 stocks in the NASDAQ, and primarily this is more so putting your money in technology companies. Again, with both S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100, you're still investing in technology, but NASDAQ 100 puts more of your money into more technology-based stocks and companies, if that makes sense. All right. So through the historical data, from 1984 to 2024, the S&P 500 has returned about 11% annually, but the NASDAQ 100 has averaged about 13% a year. Now, quick little pause here. These are the three mistakes that people should avoid. Again, to avoid Taylor Swift's situation in this example, to avoid what 95% of people will go through probably when they start investing, this is the three. The first one is they confuse diversification with complicating the strategy. I've seen this in my personal life again. People think just buying a bunch of random shit is considered diversifying your money, when in fact, if you invest into an index fund, which again, this is something like an S&P 500 or an NASDAQ 100, your money is already getting diversified. So understanding that first piece, that don't complicate it. Don't get so crazy. Just Google what Warren Buffett would recommend individuals like you and I to do. Google or ChatGPT what Ray Dalio would tell individuals like you and I to do. All these billionaire guys, all these millionaires that are legitimate investors are going to tell you pretty foundational stuff that is all aligned across the board. All right. So again, don't get lost in the sauce. Don't do too much. All right. The second thing, a lot of people underestimate how much fees are. In this example, again, 1% annual fee a year doesn't sound like much, but over the course of 40 years, it's going to eat up 28% of your returns. So whether that's through a financial advisor, which once again, I'm not telling you not to get a financial advisor or what, but I'm just saying understand the cost of these different things, because if let's say over the course of your life you made $1 million and $300,000 of that or 30% of that is going towards an advisor, then it's like, well, can you actually get returns similar or even better without that? Food for thought. The third thing, playing it too safe. So keeping 30% of your money in bonds or cash might feel safe, but inflation guarantees you lose purchasing power. Again, the GTA cheat code that I explain all the times. If the central bank of the United States prints more and more dollars, then everything goes up in price. Imagine this hypothetical. If you and I and everyone on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube woke up with $10 million in their bank account, in theory, everything would just increase in price. We would both want the nicest penthouse. We would both want the nicest car. We would both want to eat at the nicest restaurant. So, supply and demand 101 is very simple. More dollars chasing the same amount of goods and services means prices go up. Your dollars are devaluing day after day in your bank account, doing nothing for you. All right. Now, let's look at this last piece here, retirement. If Taylor Swift earned 6% annually and invested $500 a month for 40 years, again, she'd retire with $658,000 using the rule of 4%, which basically the rule of 4%, which I didn't explain in the newsletter, is saying the following. I can reasonably make 4% in a given year risk-free, whether it's like a high yield savings account or a CD. So the idea is, let's say if I spend $40,000 a year in terms of cost of living, that means if I have $1 million, I can make 4% a high yield savings account off $1 million, and that 40,000 that I make risk free can pay for my shit, can pay for my groceries, can pay for my expenses. So the rule of 4% is saying, again, if Taylor Swift has $658,000, the rule of 4% means how much can I spend and how much can I make to balance it out so I never run out of money. With that equation factored in, it says Taylor Swift can spend $2,000 a month to live on retirement. Think about that. In 2065, that is probably not going to be that much. Now let's compare Bad Bunny's situation. It says with the 10% annual return over the same 40 years, he would retire with $2.4 million. So using the rule of 4% again, 4% of $2.4 million, I'm going to say that's something in the vicinity of $100K, right? So basically it means Bad Bunny can spend $8,000 a month forever and never run out of money. Okay, so the lesson here, guys, these things are simple. This is not something that's a secret that I just invented or I discovered this, right? This is knowledge that is reasonably available on ChatGPT, Google, and everywhere. A lot of people don't either learn about these things because they don't have the resources or whatever. But now you know. All right, so try to avoid those 3 mistakes, and ultimately, this would potentially better your financial situation. All right, hope this helps out. Once again, none of this is considered financial advice, and do your own research. Hope this helps, and have a great day. Let's go.